So I did not watch this yet, FYI.
Email.
So I do remember her, though. She was testifying in the stand. I do remember her. So this video says Murdaugh's first responders answer lingering questions. So I wonder if they're going to answer any of our lingering questions.
When I got there was a lot of emergency vehicles, and so I had to park on the roadway because there were so many. And I walked up and I met with my captain, and he basically explained what we had: a deceased male and female.
Is the audio okay, or should we make it louder?
Mother and son, and that it was a pretty prominent family. Alec Murdaugh was the father and the 911 caller. From my initial walkthrough, I could tell that most likely the last thing Maggie ever saw was her son. Very graphically.
Oh, I think I remember him as well. I think he also testified on the stand. Okay.
Murdered.
The defense had this really...
Hi,
One of
Chandler.
the main themes was that the responding officers, investigators, immediately focused in on Alec Murdaugh.
Yep, they said that y'all immediately focused on Alex Murdaugh, and they said that the scene wasn't conserved very well, things were being trampled on, footprints, allowed Alex Murdaugh friends, family to trample over the crime scene.
True.
I won't say that we didn't. I mean, we've got 3 people. 2 are dead, 1's alive. So of course, you know, he was a person of interest to look into. Also, he was the one that found the bodies and made the call. The first thing that stood out to me was his clothes. I mean, he was, I know I said it on the stand, but he was so clean because it was a very graphic scene. It was
Apparently, I think Jim said that Alex Murdaugh, when Alex Murdaugh was testifying and Jim was asking questions, I think they implied that like there might have been blood on Alex Murdaugh's fingertips. Okay, fingertips. It's like you see your entire your wife, your wife and your son dead, and you only touched them using your fingertips. Like, that's weird.
It was a mess around Paul. It was, as Captain said, it was soaking wet. There was blood. There was brain, skull, hair, and he's claimed we had listened to the 911 call prior to interviewing.
Like, it's possible that Alex Murdaugh was like, okay, if I'm squeaky clean, they won't suspect me because the scene is so bloody, it's so messy, that if I'm clean, white t-shirt and everything, then they will know that I was never at the murder scene. He probably was thinking that. But then he didn't realize that, like, oh, but wait, if I was actually someone who was not the perpetrator, if I was actually someone who just literally stumbled upon a crime scene and it's my wife and my son, then maybe I should have went up to them and touched them and all that stuff to make sure they were alive and get blood all over myself. But he probably wanted to be squeaky clean because he didn't want to be a suspect. But then in the end, it ended up working against him.
And he had said on that he tried to turn him over and he checked him and there's nothing on him. And he's wearing these tennis shoes that have a light colored bottom and there's nothing. So that immediately stood out to me.
Gotta call her parents.
I finally finished binging the Murdaugh Murders podcast. What a rabbit hole. Is there anything in the podcast that wasn't covered in the trial, David? I have not seen it yet. They gave him the benefit of the doubt instead of actually conducting an investigation. And yeah, and they didn't bring him to the police station to do an interview. They interviewed him in the police car. You know, wouldn't you want to do a formal interview? Be like, okay, well, let's bring this guy in. Like, hey, let's talk at the police station. We just need to get some details, information, so we could find who did this to your wife and your son. You know, not treat him like a suspect, but bring him to the police station. But they interviewed him in the police car. I'm like, do people normally get interviewed in police cars?
What's her name?
Her name is Maggie Murdaugh. Margaret Brandstetter Murdaugh. How you doing?
His body language is sending indicators out the roof. He blank stares when he's recalling his story, which is more of an indication of him recapping memory of what he did, instead of his eyes dancing around where he's collecting information in front of him.
I went to my wife, and I could see.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them.
The only time his eyes dance around is when he is listening to us talk or when we ask a question outside the parameters of what he's obviously had rehearsed.
Was it unusual for Maggie to feed the dogs this time of night or check on them?
Oh no, I mean, she played with those dogs all the time. And it's especially common for her to, she's been gone for a while, to come and let especially two of them out to run.
He doesn't look at you at all when you ask him a question, but he looks when he is trying to receive information.
Oh, interesting.
For example, in one of the other interviews with them that he asked, do y'all have any good information? Do you have any good leads? I think is the way he put it. It's the first time I ever watched him actually turn and look at him.
So you feel like it's not random. You feel like it.
I will say this though, the only good thing about these police car interviews is that we get a nice zoom in of Alex Murdaugh's face and facial reaction. Usually when they're in the interrogation room, it's kind of hard to see like how they react unless the camera's like really close. Like, I don't know, remember the Stephanie Lazarus one? Where did they put the camera that was like so close to her and she didn't realize that it was filming? Because that was a good angle too. That was like really up close to her face. I really like that. The police cam footage of the night is so horrific, at least for me. They blur the bodies, but it's so crazy just how real it felt. Yeah. As a person with some Irish in my genetics, confirmed the best it gets is slightly tan, quickly turn into a poor lobster. What are you guys talking about?
It's intentional. I mean, planned.
I don't know what to feel right now.
But I feel like this is a disadvantage for investigators because when you're questioning someone, you want to be able to see them. I feel like the investigators having to awkwardly turn their body like this and you can't really see the person. I feel like it's a disadvantage for the investigators, but an advantage for people who are rewatching this. But I feel like you want the investigators to have advantage because based on the body language of the person, maybe from there you can pivot your questions to better get better answers from them,
And I hate to say that. I don't know what to feel right now.
So do y'all have any good clues?
I mentioned on the stand that he wasn't crying, and everyone's different. But his emotions, I call them stop sign emotions. He could be in his version of a cry, and in a split second stop and go change direction and go into another story.
And I ran over to Maggie.
Who's the guy that's comforting him? Is he like an investigator, or I think he's an investigator, right? I thought it was Jim for a second, but I was like, oh no, Jim don't got white hair.
Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out.
When I first got there and you saw the body cam footage where we lifted the sheet, I don't know how much attention you paid to Deputy McDowell, but it literally took him like 30 seconds to figure out where to place his foot because he wasn't going to step on anything. We kept hearing why aren't you wearing booties? It's standard protocol to wear a bootie. It's not standard protocol to wear booties. Booties are made out of a paper material.
Right.
Their purpose
I have booties in my house in case people need to come in and fix things. Y'all better be wearing booties.
is not to take anything into a crime scene or take something else out. All right, so if it's wet and bloody outside, what's going to introduce less? Paper booties that are soaked in water and blood or rubber soles. I mean, it's a situational issue.
Oh.
There's a group of footprints in the center of the room, which I believe you heard.
I have a friend that's in law enforcement. I want to ask him that. Be like, do y'all normally wear booties? But I guess his answer makes sense, though. It's a situational thing, and it's raining anyways.
The agents say belonged to Paul. At 3:16 or 3:17, as we are removing Paul's body, all of that has been processed. We leave a print in the center of the room as we're removing his body.
Oh,
we actually
interesting.
have a picture of us leaving the print. It's all been processed.
So there's
That
no
was us.
bloody footprint that wasn't tested or identified that the defense wanted the jury to believe that could have been left by the perpetrator.
It
There's
was not the perpetrator. It was us.
The defense brought up hair in Maggie's
I wish they brought this up during the trial, but okay.
hands.
Yes. So when I was with SLED one day, we were reviewing the autopsy photographs, and I noticed in one of her hands she had some strands of brown hair that were her own hair. Just no one ever asked me that. So unfortunately, her head wound, when it exited out the back of her head, it displaced a lot of hair. And when her body was laying in the grass, a lot of it landed around where her hands and arms were. And so when her body got moved, the hair went with her hands.
And that was something
that's what
the
that
jury
was.
didn't clearly know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think they mentioned it in closing, that Maggie had hair in her hands that wasn't tested. I don't know if it was tested, but
Yeah, I was like, what is Jim talking about? Because I think Jim was the one who mentioned that. I was like, did he mean the alleles that were found underneath her fingernails? But I thought it was kind of interesting how they just like mentioned, oh, Maggie had hair that they didn't test. It's like, well, why didn't you bring this up throughout the trial? They just like threw it in there in closing argument.
I can tell you from
God.
looking at it and matching it to the rest of the hair that was laying around her body, it was most likely from the exit wound in the back of her head.
I will defend Sled a little bit on this, because I know that the big thing has been, why didn't they go straight to the house with the search warrant and search the house? And we don't know exactly, as Laura said, we left and there was a new team taking over. I don't know what they saw exactly that steered them in the direction they went.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, they got 3 interviews out of Alex.
Oh, we watched this part already, but we'll listen to it again.
3 interviews that we're able to look at his body language, we're able to take the stories that he got that don't match up. One of the biggest pushes in the trial was that he lied, and we eventually got him to come clean on the stand. And we have 3 opportunities recorded of him being interviewed by agents in regards to that lie. And every one of them had an opportunity to come clean, he didn't. Had we treated him like a whole suspect that night, if we'd have gone in and tore apart the house and drilled him as a suspect as opposed to a caller, he's an attorney. You don't think that we'd have called back the next day and say, hey, we need to do a follow-up, and I'm telling you, it would have shut down. And that may have been part of their plan. I don't know completely, but I can see very clearly that, I mean, every time we talked to him, he had an attorney friend with him. If we'd have put...
That was useless, by the way, because the attorney friend, was it Chris Fleming that showed up to him on one of the interviews? Chris should have been like, GTFO, let's get out of here, Alex. Let's go. Make an excuse, say you have diarrhea. Let's get out of here. But no, they sat through answering more questions, man.
Push that envelope the first night, we'd have had 1 interview, and it would have been cut short, and we would not have had the other 2 to use to compare those stories. I believe he had some help in the aftermath.
Yes.
The disposal of weapons, the moving around of vehicles. We heard so much about.
Actually, Dr. Todd Grant made a. Because I always thought it was kind of interesting how Alex Murdaugh, his entire name just sounds entirely mispronounced. I would have pronounced it Alex Murdaugh, but his name is pronounced Alec Murdaugh. And I'm like, how did you get Alec Murdaugh from Alex Murdaugh? But Dr. Todd Grant makes like this, like, he always does, he does like really like dry jokes sometimes, but he made like a thumbnail about that. I thought it was really funny.
Oh my goodness, SLED and the AG's office, and they don't have anything. It's all circumstantial.
Dr. Todd.
So I pose this question to you. If it's a cleaned crime scene, staged crime scene, cleaned crime scene, would you expect to find more evidence or less?
Dr. Todd.
And that's what's kind of hard to get people to understand, is that we didn't find a lot. But why didn't we find a lot? Because it was cleaned. I mean, it's manipulated. There's evidence removed from the...
Oh, this one right here. Name mispronouncing magisterial monarchy. I love Dr. Todd Grant. Oh, I haven't watched that video yet, though. I gotta watch it.
Scene.
You could do all that in 17 minutes, or what was it, 16, 17 minutes? You have no doubt. No.
Well, you say 16 or 17 minutes, but I believe that they're pretty confident they were killed around 9 p.m. And then your phone call's not made until 10:07.
No, we pronounce it Alex. I just wasn't sure if it was a Southern thing to pronounce it Alec, or if it was a Southern thing to pronounce Murdaugh as Murdoch. Like, I don't know. Or maybe, like, there are just some people out there that mispronounce their name to make it sound more exotic. I don't know. Because when I was initially covering this case, I was like, Alex Murdaugh. People are like, you're pronouncing his name wrong. I'm like, what do you mean I'm pronouncing his name wrong? Murdaugh, Alex, like, those are names that are not hard to pronounce. People are like, no, it's pronounced Murdoch. So, now that he's convicted, maybe we'll just call him Alex Murdaugh. Jesus.
So
And I think
Tam.
Almeida came into play
Yeah.
a little bit with that, and
Okay.
got him. That would buy him more time, like to come back the next day, and which I think Miss Shelley testified to that. So
Oh, okay. So I do want to make a comment though, because I thought it was a Southern thing to pronounce it differently, right? But there were news reporters in the South that were reporting on Alex Murdaugh and his family, and they were saying the same thing. They were saying Alex Murdaugh, Alex Murdaugh. So I don't know. I remember I was working for this one person. Her name was like Therese. Her name was like Therese, okay? But I think she wanted to like up the exoticness of her name up, so she called herself like Therese. I'm like, girl, I'm pretty sure her name's Therese, but okay.
Raincoat.
It's
yes,
a Buford
blue
thing?
raincoat, him
Is
showing
it?
up at 6:30 in the morning,
Buford
which
thing?
wasn't usual. So I think he had more than enough time.
we had a nationally televised trial at the courthouse. We had it evacuated in 5 minutes. We had all of our priorities relocated under escort. No one knew where they were. They were taken care of. They were actually fed lunch. Everybody was escorted out. Everything was secured in 5 minutes. And in all
What are we
honesty,
talking about? Sorry.
in 2 hours we were working on a suspect, and in 6 hours we had the phone in our hands. We have to be careful about what we say initially, and I know that was, trust me, I wanted to get up and tell everybody in the nation, hey, this is how we do things. I mean, we do plan, we do our jobs. We leaned hard on SLED, hard on the South Carolina Department of Corrections. The AG's office helped out with this. So there were a ton of hands in it, and guess what? Here we are 2 hours later, we're heading down the road to go look for a suspect.
That's what I'm saying. Judge Newman also said Murdaugh as well. And I think sometimes he would like correct himself, say Murdick. But yeah, I pronounce his name elliptical Murdaugh.
6 hours later, we've got the actual device in our hands that made the call.
Except for
All right, Sled. Good job. Okay, so this is the next video that I want to watch. So I watched half of it because I want to see where it was going. And I thought they did a really good job of recapping it. I do want to add in some of my own information to it. So